Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. We've got some really interesting cases that we're going to talk about. Not one, but two cases that are waiting for justice, and they're both directly related to Halloween. Of course, I hope that you guys have a safe Halloween tomorrow. And keep in mind, if you want to spend some time with me live tonight and see my Halloween costume for the year, you can do that at Yellow Tape True Crime Game Time. It is our finale episode. We've got a bunch of special things planned. We've got great guests. We've got Danielle Hallen, Dr. Scott from LA Not So Confidential, Jamie Rice from Murderish, of course, Rebecca Sebastian, and myself with the true crime trivia that we've whipped up. 4 more interesting games, plus a bonus game for you viewers if we hit our donation threshold. And we're working on raising money once again for Private Investigations for the Missing, a charity that I really want to see some positive progress for. I really want to help them. So I'm hoping that you guys will join me in doing that tonight live on Yellow Tape. Also, if you can't catch it tonight, you can watch the replay, and the fundraiser will still be active for, I believe, 30 days after the live stream. So you can still donate, still be a part of that, and still help a wonderful organization. So on to today's stories. We've got one where a family has been waiting for justice for about a year, and this is a story from the UK. Pretty tragic. We don't have a ton of detail, but of course we're going to do the best that we can to pull all the information out that we can to give you guys a solid understanding and hopefully raise enough exposure that maybe this video can get in front of the right person and they can do the right thing and pick up that phone. But we've also got another case we're looking at that takes place here in the US, and that is a case where a family has been waiting for justice. It'll be 31 years tomorrow. Can you help them with that? Let's get started by learning about where this first case takes place. That is Galveston, Texas. Galveston is a coastal resort city and port off of the southeastern Texas coast on Galveston Island and Pelican Island in the U.S. state of Texas. It has a population of 47,743 as of 2010 and is the county seat of surrounding Galveston County and the second largest municipality in the county. Interestingly, the population back when this took place in 1989 was closer to 60,000. I think it was actually a little over 60,000 in this area. This is one of those cases that's hit that age where we have to look at newspapers to get a better understanding of it. Of course, a huge thank you to newspapers.com. I'm a subscriber with them for looking into cases exactly like this. And here we can see the Galveston, I can't make out what the name of it is there, Daily News. They covered it up with an address sticker, it looks like. And at the top of this page, we're seeing items about trick-or-treating. Ghosts and goblins take part in Halloween festivities. But the big story on the front page, Isle grocery store owner found dead. And here, Durilis Salinas, father of the slain woman, stands in front of his daughter's store on Tuesday. So let's roll it back to 1989 and see what we can learn about this case. A Galveston woman was slain Tuesday at her corner grocery store at 31st Street and Avenue Q. Sylvia Salinas, 30, was stabbed to death while working behind the counter at Salinas food store. The killing apparently took place during a robbery. Salinas was alone in the store, said Galveston Police Lieutenant Bill Dagg. Police found Salinas lying on the floor behind the counter. She had been stabbed in the chest and apparently was dead when they arrived. The handling of the cash register drawer, which was open and empty, may have triggered the silent alarm, police said. That's one of the things that's curious about this case. This is a woman that understood the potential risks around running a store like this. So there was an alarm system, there was an active alarm service, there was a trigger that she could have hit to notify to kick off the silent alarm and notify her security company. But that didn't happen. So that's an interesting aspect of this case because it kind of leads you to believe that there's a possibility that she was either comfortable with this person or might have known them on a friendly level, something like that. And from what I understand, this is a pretty close-knit neighborhood, and she would kind of go beyond in terms of if people needed credit extended to them or things like that, she would kind of help people out. So, of course, when you're investigating something like that, now you've got a spider web in terms of connectivity, motive, all these different people that were interacting with her at different levels. But they're pointing out here, they do think that the silent alarm was triggered specifically because of how the register was handled. What happened, it appears, is the attacker used the knife, killed her, then used the knife to try to open the register, and that set off the alarm in some way. A private security company received an alarm from the store and relayed it to Galveston Police Department at 1:23. From what I understand, the officers arrived within 4 minutes, so pretty decent response time. But of course, with a wound like this in particular, that's a very, very big 4 minutes, and we'll learn more about that as we continue here. Just another quick note from another section of this article. Identification Bureau Sergeant James R. Kitchen was at the grocery store after the slaying, videotaping the scene of the crime. We got to roll back to 1989 in terms of, how they're cataloging this information. And we literally have someone with a camcorder just going through the scene, taking film of all of it. Of course, they still had pretty good police practices that we still use to this day. We have the weapon there, so I'm sure it was checked for fingerprints. I don't have any information on if anything came back from that, but here we are 31 years later. The case still isn't solved, so I have to assume that either they couldn't get prints, or if they did get prints, they weren't able to match them to anyone in particular. 1989, DNA still in its very early years in terms of how it's used with law enforcement. And that's kind of a little bit of a question. We're going to have a little tap on that before we hit the end of the review here. But let's go ahead and continue with some more articles. Jumping over to the Galveston Daily News. They were, from what I could see, the primary source that was reporting on this. And I'm really thankful that they did so much coverage on it. As a matter of fact, there's more coverage than I'm even showing you here. It's just they're kind of repeating some of the information over and over. But here, on the 4th of November, we get a little more information about the specifics. So we had Officer John Lopez arrive at 1:27. So like I said, very, very fast response, 4 minutes. He found Sylvia lying behind the counter. According to the police report, the victim was obviously dead. No defensive type wounds are present on the decedent's forearms, wrists, or hands. There is one stab wound above the left breast. So once again, if we're considering the possibility that this is someone she was comfortable with or someone that she knew, we've got no defensive wounds. Seems like she didn't even know this was coming. And that one wound punctured her heart. A knife measuring 9 to 10 inches in length was found near the body. Except for coins and food stamps, the cash register was empty. By cleaning the register of all bills, the killer unknowingly triggered the alarm. Sylvia never sounded an alarm, nor, and here's another very important fact that once again is supporting this idea she knew this person, nor did she reach for a loaded gun she kept under the counter. Because of that, because of her relaxed posture at the time of the stabbing, she was actually seated on a stool. Police reported the following. She may have known her assailant enough to invite him or her behind the counter, as she often allows with people that she knows. It's very possible she knew her assailant. Not only did she have a loaded gun literally within reach, she also had a machete that she kept down there. This is a woman that wasn't messing around. She was going to defend what was hers, but she was also very caring, very generous with her community. And it seems like that line in terms of keeping herself safe might have unfortunately got blurred a little bit. Continuing with another article just from another 2 days after that one, November 6th, 1989, we have a few friends of hers that are speaking up. Cynthia Marsh, in the photo on the right, actually was a roommate of hers, lived with Sylvia for 4 years. So I just wanted to share some of their insights about this. Marsh said, Whoever killed her didn't just kill her, they killed a part of everyone who knew her. Marsh said she agrees with the police statement that whoever killed the grocery store owner was someone she knew. Sylvia was a very alert person, she said. She watched everyone in the store. For her to be stabbed while she was sitting on a stool meant that the person who stabbed her was someone she knew. That store was her life. She was a very alert person in running her business. She's been doing it for 10 years. And she was a person who was alert to danger. She could tell when people who came into her store were a threat, Marsh said. When this happened, it was a busy time. It was lunchtime. That's something that I didn't even put together. We know that, the silent alarm is being triggered in the 1 o'clock hour. People were always going in and out. There was always activity around Salinas grocery. People were always going in and out, she said. The neighborhood is kind of an open neighborhood. Someone is always watching. People sit on their porches. It's hard for me to believe at that time of day that no one saw anything. There has to be someone out there who saw something. And interestingly, there's only one little hint of that I've come across in all the articles that I've looked at on this case. Police have not heard from, nor has anyone identified, two men who were reportedly near the Salinas food store at the time of the killing. A black man dressed in dark clothing was seen using the telephone outside the store. Police believe the man may have seen the assailant. A man with sandy blonde hair or brown hair was seen running down the alley by the store, according to police. Obviously, I'd be very suspicious of that one. They said that the man may have not been involved in the slaying, but could have information that would aid the investigation. I haven't seen anything in terms of either of these men being identified or coming forward. And kind of back to her friend's point, this is a pretty close-knit neighborhood, a lot of potential witnesses, enough that we could actually get these descriptions of these men, but somehow they're not people that are known by the people that are witnessing them. It's a very, very tough case, of course, on the outset, because we've got robbery as a motive. So the interconnectedness of it being someone very close to her, probably not as likely. We're probably talking someone that she was dealing with on almost like a business level. And of course, for someone that's working a retail operation, that is just a huge list. And keep in mind, we're talking 1989. We're not in an age of having really strong digital records like we do nowadays, all kinds of different technology in terms of tracking who might have been coming, who might have been going. I'm also not finding any mention of, we know that there's video taken by the investigator, but I'm not finding any mention of video systems that were in place for the store at the time. But she did have the security system and did have a service for that. In another article, we also hear that the family has a bit of a unique regret around all this. Salinas' brother regrets selling her the store. The store was always too much of a problem for my family, said Dorillis Jr. We'll definitely leave the store closed and put it up for sale. If we hadn't sold her the store, she wouldn't have been there alone, and this wouldn't have happened. Sylvia was a very loving girl and a naive girl too, said her brother. She wanted to believe in people. She died believing that people are basically good. She would never suspect anyone would hurt her. And that's really the heartbreaking aspect of this story for me, because you guys know I'm always hoping for that, always looking for that, always trusting that even in people that do very, very dark things, there's some little light of good in there that might shine through, that might change the outcome of a case just like this. But on top of that heartbreaking aspect, we have literally an act of God that potentially damages this investigation as well. Before that act of God happened, from what I can see, this case seemed to go cold. We're talking years and years. I'm not finding any real updates on this case. But then we have something happen in 2008, and that is Hurricane Ike. Hurricane Ike was a powerful tropical cyclone that swept through portions of the Greater Antilles and Northern America in September 2008, wreaking havoc on infrastructure and agriculture, particularly in Cuba and Texas. Ike took a similar track to the 1900 Galveston hurricane. It absolutely did. And what it did was basically destroy the records of the investigation, potentially destroyed evidence related to this investigation as well. But thankfully, and I don't know why it takes this long, but it does, 10 years after that, we hear about a VHS tape. VHS tape that survived Ike could help solve murder of Galveston woman stabbed in heart. Decades later, detectives are reevaluating old evidence. One of the most valuable items in the case file is the videotape of the crime scene. Hours after Sylvia Salinas was murdered, detectives arrived and recorded the scene. That tape I told you about in the earlier articles somehow survives Hurricane Ike, is somehow discovered, and is now investigators' best bet to move this case forward. In the video, a crowd can be seen outside the white building with police tape blocking the front door. The camera moves inside. There are bloody footprints on the store floor. As a matter of fact, here is a screen grab from the video, and you can see right here we've got a bloody footprint. So if nothing else, we at least now know that they could do some type of analysis, possibly on different soles of different shoes from that time period, maybe get it close to also a size for the shoe. It's hard to tell without being an expert, but I think there's enough markings there that they can at least get it down to a manufacturer, possibly even a model. Let's continue with what else is on the tape. This is the murder weapon, says Detective Michelle Sollenberger with the Galveston County Sheriff's Office, pointing to the video screen. A bloody knife is seen sitting next to a cash register. And here it is. And this is kind of the best screen grab I could get of the knife. You can see the handle is up here, very long blade. It's kind of hard for me to tell, but I think this looks like kind of a typical larger kitchen knife. I don't know if that's really going to be a strong clue in all of this, but another thing I'm wondering about is that knife still around? And is this article going to help us understand that a little more? This video has never been seen by the public until now. This video is the only evidence we have left in the case, Detective Sollenberger said. That would lead me to believe that they actually don't have the knife anymore, which is a terrible aspect to this, because especially with where we're at with DNA nowadays, genetic genealogy, if that knife was still around and if there's some chance that they could pull DNA from it and be able to test that, there is a chance that they could run that through those processes and maybe help identify this person. I'm still holding out hope that maybe this is just a little bit of a misstatement, and you're going to see why as we continue through the articles here. I was super surprised to see the VHS tape still existed, said the detective. Salinas' brother, Derlis Salinas, said he has not been back to the store since Salinas was murdered. Returning to talk with Eyewitness News was an emotional visit. It breaks the heart, Derlis said, tears welling up in his eyes. She didn't deserve to die that way. Nobody does. So videotape, a few things that can be discovered from the videotape. At least there's a chance that this is going to help progress this case. But is there something else out there? Let's jump over to this article from October 31st, Halloween, last year, 2019. Halloween murder mystery still haunts woman's family 30 years later. On Halloween 30 years ago, the life of then 10-year-old Maria Gibson was changed as she was putting on her costume to go trick-or-treating. The phone rang, and my sister started screaming. My aunt had been killed, she said. Sylvia Salinas was the strongest person she knew. She was so tough and wasn't scared of anyone, Gibson recalled. The knife the killer used was also left behind. Gibson is hopeful that DNA can be extracted through new advanced methods to finally identify the murderer. And this is why I'm not sure. I don't know if the detective misspoke when she said that's the only evidence they have is the videotape, or I don't know if maybe Gibson isn't aware of the fact that that's the only evidence they have. But listen to this. She speaks to Galveston detectives once a month. That is leading me to believe that she might have some inside line on what's going on with this case that's a little stronger than just her hoping that the knife somehow survived Hurricane Ike as well. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's what we have going on here, because I'm thankful the tape is there. I think that can certainly be helpful, particularly if this gets to a trial, which I hope it does. But for tracking this person down, that knife is a much stronger object. And I really, really do hope that it's still in play with all this. Gibson also places flowers on her aunt's grave often. As long as we're alive, we won't stop looking for that person. Even if they're too old to be around anymore, they're going to have to answer to God for what they did. If they don't get punished on earth, they'll get punished in the next life. I guarantee that, Gibson said. So as with all unsolved cases here on the channel, contact details are in the description box down below. If you need to remain anonymous, you can by contacting Galveston County Crimestoppers. I've got their details down below as well. Feels so terrible for that family to go through that on a day that most of us look for celebration on. And I'm even wondering, is that part of it? Is this something where I saw that some of the comments were kind of leaning towards maybe there's drugs involved in this? You know, crack, of course, was becoming an epidemic in the late 80s. And I think it was a neighbor's comments that was talking about maybe this is someone that needed to score. Maybe they went to ask her for money. She wasn't going to give them the money. And then things took a turn. When I went to a conference previously where they had a lot of investigators talking about murder, Dr. Henry Lee was there as well. I believe it was during his presentation. They talked about the fact that a lot of murders are situations that go wrong. And obviously, we've got all the signs of a robbery here. And the robbery happens directly after she's killed. So it's a little bit of a change in the order. Most of the time you'll have an attempt at a robbery that maybe doesn't go well, things escalate, and then it turns into a murder case. But considering that she had a gun within reach, she had a knife within reach, she didn't even get to that point, it seems to me like there was a little more premeditation. And I'm not saying to the point that this person planned this out weeks in advance or even days in advance, but I have a feeling that they knew what they were doing when they walked in there. Another question I have about this case is about that knife. Is the knife actually part of the store? Is it a knife that was there regularly, or was that knife brought by the person as well? Because that would also give us just a little more insight into how far ahead this was premeditated. You know, if it's someone that's fiending for their drug fix, they go in there, they ask for money. She says, I can't help you. You still owe me from last time. They see the knife on the table. You know, the level of premeditation all of a sudden shrinks quite a bit. But still, because of the order of actions, we know their point was they were going to take her out of play and they were going to take what was in that cash register. And that's exactly what they did. But then to hear the considerations of the family, you know, we're sorry that we ever even sold her the store. I mean, it just breaks your heart to know all the different ways that family members can hurt around an instance like this for 31 years. And I truly, truly hope they don't have to reach 32. I'm thankful the detective's on it. I'm thankful that ABC 13 was pushing coverage on it. I hope that will continue, and I hope that someone out there picks up that phone. Someone knows about this. Someone absolutely knows about this, and this family deserves answers after this long. They're still in a lot of pain. So now we are jumping to almost the other side of the world, over to the UK for a story there. Another tough one, but the search for justice is pretty much just beginning, and we're going to see, seems like law enforcement has a lot of options to look at with this one. This case taking place in Basingstoke. Basingstoke is the largest town in the administrative county of Hampshire in south central England. It is located 48 miles or 77 kilometers southwest of London. According to the 2016 population estimate, the town had a population of 113,776. Basingstoke is often nicknamed Donut City or Roundabout City because of the number of large roundabouts. What I'm really worried about is that the investigation might be stuck in a roundabout of its own. And I think you're going to understand why after I show you the details of what's going on with the investigation over the past year. But before we jump into all that, I want to first ask the question, because I wasn't even sure, do they celebrate Halloween in the UK? So we're going to take just a mini diversion over to smithsonianmag.com. How Halloween has taken over England. And this was posted in 2014. In England, Halloween is so hot right now. I have a distinct sense that Halloween is overtaking or has overtaken Guy Fawkes Night, says James Sharp of the University of York in England. Halloween dress-up balls and parties are becoming popular with young Brits, just as they have been with their American counterparts. Houses and shops are decorated with images of witches, pumpkins, and Michael Myers. Even pets are dressed in silly Halloween costumes. So it seems like, yes, Halloween is certainly being celebrated in England. And as a matter of fact, seems like it's becoming more and more popular. Let's go ahead and continue with some information about this area in particular. Over at romseyadvisor.co.uk, there were 394 violent and sexual offenses in Basingstoke in December of 2019, which was up 41% from the previous year when they had 279 crimes like that reported. In December 2017, 343 violent and sexual offenses were recorded. So it's interesting because they talk about it like the stat has increased from the previous year, but then you bring in that third year from before, and it just seems like they might have had a little bit of a dip in 2018. But how do those stats compare against us in the U.S. in general? Crime in the United States? For aggravated assaults, which does include sexual assaults as well, our total rate on that is 382. And this is a rate that basically goes into, that means 382 instances for every 100,000 population members. And that's a pretty decently close match because we've got Basingstoke with a population at 114 or 113,000. So honestly, if we looked at it percentage to percentage, Basingstoke might just be a twinge safer than the United States on average for those types of crime. So what are the specifics of the crime that we're looking at here? We're talking about Halloween 2019. Police launched an attempted murder investigation after a 31-year-old man was attacked in Gershwin Road, Basingstoke, on Thursday, Halloween evening. He was later found by police in a rear garden with serious head injuries. Detective Chief Inspector Justin Torgo asked people to check garden sheds and bins for anything that shouldn't be there. The first thing that struck me about this is having him found in a rear garden. I know here in the U.S., most of our backyards are closed off, a lot of them. It kind of depends on what area you're in. But just hearing the way that this was described, I was wondering, like, was he at a party? Was he at a house party of some kind and then something went weird there? But I don't think so because of these specific descriptions. I think it happened while he was along the street. He might have gotten injured. I don't know if the people that attacked him actually kind of put him in someone's rear garden. I don't know if he crawled off into a rear garden seeking safety. I don't know if the rear garden maybe was just completely open to the street and that's just where it went down. But obviously we have law enforcement asking for the locals to check for items specifically as well. Witnesses saw a group running away from the Gershwin Road area at about 10 to midnight. They ran along the footpath between Gershwin Road and Quilter Road towards the play area alongside Quilter Road. He added, "It is possible that those responsible dumped vital evidence along their escape route in the hope that it will never be found. So this is where the support of residents can prove vital." I'm sure one of the things they're hoping to find is any type of weapon that might have been used in this attack. And unfortunately, we don't get a lot of great detail, but by the time we hit the end of these articles, I think we're going to have a better idea about what that could be. The response from the community so far has been great, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for their support so far. This is the man who was attacked. His name is Frazer Brabant. He is also a father to 2 young children. Over at portsmouth.co.uk, Frazer Brabant from Basingstoke was seriously assaulted during an attack on October 31st. Frazer was found with serious injuries in the rear garden of a residential property in Gershwin Road. Detective Inspector Lee McClellan said this was an extremely violent and cowardly attack. We are appealing to anyone who has any information about this crime, no matter how small or unimportant you think it is, please get in touch with us. I and my team are committed to finding those responsible and bringing them to justice. Now, at the time of this attack, we just hear that it's brutal. Obviously, he was probably taken for some form of medical treatment. He was, and they effectively had to put him into a coma. And he is in that coma for several months. Talk about a nightmare to go through something like this, seemingly to be targeted. We're going to see some information from law enforcement. They think this is a targeted attack. To be brutalized in that way, to almost the point of having your life taken, and then you're literally being put into a medically induced coma to try to survive those injuries. Continuing at BBC.com with some information from November 1st, he remains in hospital in a life-threatening condition, officers said. Hampshire police said it was a targeted attack, and officers would be carrying out extra patrols in the area. The force is appealing for anyone with information or with CCTV and dashcam footage to get in touch. He stays in that coma until January, and unfortunately, he's not going to make it. Tributes to Frazer Brabant, who was found injured on Halloween. In a statement, the family said, "Words cannot express the way we feel about losing Frazer. He was a much-loved son, grandson, brother, and father who has left behind 2 little girls, aged 7 and 11. He fought so bravely and for so long. Because of his condition in hospital, his daughters were unable to go and say a final goodbye to their daddy." Terrible. He will be forever missed by all his family and friends, and we hope he can now rest in peace. The tribute comes following Mr. Brabant's death in hospital earlier this week, sparking a murder investigation by police. So obviously, they were first investigating this as an attempted murder back when it happened, and now, 3 months later, he does die, and that shifts the investigation into a different gear. Now it's officially a murder investigation. Frazer passed away on Tuesday, January 21st. Now we start getting some news, and interestingly, there is something that happened in November, but we'll get to the details of it. This is an article from June of 2020. 6 people arrested in connection with murder of brave and proud dad. All 6 were arrested following warrants carried out this morning at 5 addresses in Basingstoke. They are a 55-year-old woman arrested on suspicion of perverting the course of justice and conspiracy to commit murder. A 32-year-old man rearrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder. Basically, there was a group of people that were arrested previously, I believe back in November of 2019. One of the guys that was arrested that time, they rearrested him this time. Then a 57-year-old man arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder. A 22-year-old woman arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder and supplying Class B controlled substances. We have a 39-year-old man also arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, and a 37-year-old man arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder. 5 people were arrested back in November of 2019, also on suspicion of conspiracy to murder. The 5 are 2 men in their 30s from Basingstoke. Obviously, we know one of those is one of the same guys that gets rearrested here. But also 3 men from their 20s. 2 from Basingstoke and 1 from Middlesex. They remain under investigation. And this is where I'm worried about this investigation being stuck in a roundabout. I mean, we're already talking about 2 separate times when groups have been arrested. The groups seem to have changed from the first round of arrests to the second, except for one person. It seems to me like I don't know if they're drilling in. I don't know if that one person in particular, if they know he's involved and they're just trying to find the other components. But seems kind of weird that we have so many people in the pot. And guess what? That's not all. Now we get to October this month, literally just a few weeks ago. Frazer Brabant, 5 more arrests in Halloween murder plot inquiry. 5 more. A total of 15 people have been arrested on suspicion of taking part in a murder plot, although no one has been charged. The latest suspects who were arrested in Basingstoke are men aged 22, 25, 27, 28, and 32. Interesting. They don't say here that that's the same guy from the previous instance, but let me take a look here. Yeah, the 32-year-old was rearrested, but now they're saying it's 15. I'm kind of curious about that. I'm wondering if the 32-year-old is actually the same dude being arrested for the 3rd time. They're being kind of clear here with their math, and they even point out about the one guy that got rearrested in June. So either it's not the same guy or they're not making that connection. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like we're looking at either 14 or at a max 15 people that have been arrested in some capacity for this. And I wish we had better information about what the prevailing theory here is. I have a feeling that this is kind of possibly looking like a hate crime of some kind or something like that. This conspiracy just seems very, very large. There's a lot of people that are being brought in on this. So I don't know if it's some type of criminal dealings or some type of hate crime. I mean, they kind of mentioned he was specifically targeted. So it gives us a little bit of insight, but we really don't know the direction that the investigation is heading in. However, we get one more little detail that might give us a little bit more understanding. Frazer Brabant murder, 5 now released under the investigation. So they were arrested on the 20th of October. They're released a day later, it seems like. Frazer was attacked in Brighton Hill on Halloween 2019, reportedly with a hammer. It's terrible. It's terrible. And kind of like we were talking before about the premeditation, the hammer is making me wonder about this and all this planning. To know that they've pulled in 15 people and we've got all these charges of conspiracy that are kind of being thrown around here. For the item to be a hammer, if it was as premeditated as it's looking, sounds like they really wanted to hurt this guy in a very particular, painful way and end his life. Or we're talking about a situation that just erupted kind of off the moment. The hammer was a nearby thing and was used. I still don't know which way it's going to go. 5 men from Basingstoke had been taken into custody yesterday in connection with the incident. The men have now been released under investigation. I wish we had more on this case, but we don't. But we've got a family, obviously, waiting for justice. We've got children that are never going to think about Halloween the same way again. And I truly hope that they don't have to wait 31 years like the Salinas family looking for answers. I hope that police in this big group that they've pulled in, I hope that they're really driving towards who is responsible for this and that they're going to hold them responsible. So that is it for the cases that we're looking at today. But if you want to look into a few more cases, I'm going to have some links in the description box down below. One of them is to a Listverse article, which is specifically about unsolved Halloween murders. It's a list of 10, so you can look into those. It's actually where I found the story of Sylvia Salinas. And I'm going to have an extra link down below to a BrainScratch episode that I released just over 2 years ago at this point, which was What Happened to Chris Jenkins. And this is a story, takes place very close to where I live. This is a story that looked like it was part of that smiley face killer theory, or if you've heard me talk about that before, you know that I'm much more into looking at the statistics around young college-aged men who drink heavily and then wind up in water sources deceased. It looked that way, but there was some strange conditions. It looked like part of his costume was found in a parking lot. Some blood was close to that. Law enforcement seems to have changed their mind and are now investigating it as a homicide, still unsolved as well. So if you are looking to spend some more time with me looking into another Halloween-related case of that nature, I'll have that link in the description box below. Of course, another reminder, tonight at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, Yellow Tape, True Crime Game Time. Join me live. Help us raise some funds for private investigations for the missing. See what Halloween costume we're wearing. I'm pretty sure all the guests are going to have something as well. Test your true crime knowledge and help us raise money for a great cause. I'd really appreciate seeing you guys there. And enjoy the end of True Crime Game Time. We did 15 episodes. We did some great things. We're going to kind of celebrate those things as well in tonight's episode. So I hope that you'll join us. Take care, everyone. Once again, have a safe and happy Halloween. Also, a quick reminder for Crime After Crime fans, on Sunday, that's November 1st, guess what? New episode, Black Friday Crimes. So Crime After Crime fans, I hope that you guys enjoy that. I'll be back on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked that you really don't want to miss. It's a case that is very... really messes me up in a certain way. Just to let you guys know, it's called My Patron, the Murderer. Yeah. So that'll be Monday on Case Cracked. I hope that you check that out as well. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here on the Lord and Arts channel.